recording? Or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What'd you do?
Hey guys, how are we doing? Wait, I guess a minute or two, get some people coming in. All right, I think we'll get going. So for those of you that have not met me or not seen me on campus, my name is Keith Buckley. I'm the head soccer coach here. Really the purpose of this is for us to just go through some of the recruiting issues and concerns and information. This is, I mean, this is a long PowerPoint. We won't get through half of this, but you will be sent the PDF. So any information that you think, oh my God, that came too quick, you'll get that in writing. Obviously, you have my information, so you can email me and just say, hey, I'm not quite sure about this. Please feel free to do so. If you see me tomorrow, just pull me aside and say, you know what, I'm not, can you explain something further? Not a problem at all. So this is not a one and done. And really the presentations are the ones that do the best, is not one where I just sit here and go through slides and everybody gets bored very quickly. But the ones that are more interactive are the more helpful. So if we do talk a lot and you're like, oh my God, we didn't get to something that I was interested in or I'm not sure about, it will be in the PDF. You can talk to me tomorrow, and if you're not in town, then you can just email me or text me, and we can have a conversation and explain it. Just like everything else, it's looking from the outside in, it looks very complicated, but when you're on the inside, it's maybe a little bit more straightforward than people seem to give credit for. So I'm going to share my screen here. I've got a PowerPoint. If, for instance, you can't hear me or you can't hear what's going on or see, please, just say that you can't, and we'll figure it out. So hopefully, all the technology will take itself. I'm assuming that everybody can hear me. Can someone just say yes? We can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you, Keith.
I can hear you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's start with a video because we've all become ADD. So staring at blank screens gets a little bit old. That didn't work very well. All right, start again.
Fesqua. And now, Lopez. Campanini will take the honors there. Obermeyer set on his line. Here we go. Nice shot. Oh, best save of the game there by Obermeyer, leaning to his left. Finally, the ball is kicked into play by Danny Barrios. And again, we got a score there. Lead here as Fesqua puts the ball into play, a couple of headers, and now we got an attack here. Great play by Obermeyer again. Crossing it into the middle, and a shot and a goal!
They're on your desk.
Landau sneaking on the backside was able to get that on goal and strike it.
Obermeyer comes out, grabs the ball, and I think that's just going to do it as 3, 2, 1. And there is the buzzer. A 1-1 tie here. FTP victory, about 12 minutes left. 1-0. Rollins really was not dynamic until about 12 minutes. As we get the goal! We get the goal! That does it!
Rollins with the biggest upset of the season.
All right, so the reason I showed that is very much so to just show how it's just fun to play college soccer, to be quite honest with you. You get to 18, you've invested a lot of time and effort into youth teams and everything else. And if you get the opportunity to be able to study and play, then it's a great opportunity and one that I recommend. I think men's soccer has definitely got some curves that's not there in other sports, and we'll talk about that as we move on. But if you can find the right school and the right place with the right academics, then I very much recommend that you try and take it so that you get to play and you get to play in a program that benefits you. So there's lots of boxes that need to be ticked, but if you can find the right program, then it's a really good positive 4 years. So obviously, when we're looking at who goes pro and who goes from the high school to NCAA, it's not a very big percentage. So we're looking at men's soccer. You've got 5.5% of high school players go to the NCAA. So the statistics are against you. And then one of the biggest issues with men's soccer specifically, and it's the same with tennis and golf, is the percentage of international players that play. So you're not just competing against players from your local area, your region, or even nationally. You're competing against people that you don't even know exist from different countries. What has happened is in the last 10 years, as there's more knowledge has been created about the level of play, the facilities, and getting a good education, is that more international students are very, really want to come and play over here. Now, that doesn't mean that they're better. It just means that the pool is bigger. So if you look at baseball, pretty much the best American players go pro. Then the next best level play Division 1, the next best level play Division 2, and the next best level play Division 3. It's a pretty symmetrical way. Whereas in soccer, maybe the very best players go and play pro, then the next best players play Division 1, and you get added in some players that have played professionally or close to being played professionally in Europe, and it just shrinks the opportunities for the players in the United States. So there is something that you have to address, and you can see that when you look at rosters, but more specifically, when you look at rosters, you should look at playing time. Because some schools have very big rosters, and where do they give their playing time to? Like I say, during this, if anybody wants to interrupt, please do so. I'm sure you're going to get very tired of my voice. So please, if you have a question, please feel free. I feel like this should have been in an auditorium, and obviously with COVID. So if we're in an auditorium, somebody would raise their hand and we would chat, and just like we would. For those of you that don't know, there's 3 divisions plus the NIA. Division 1 primarily is the bigger schools, bigger resources, better facilities. Division 3 carries itself as a much more academic outreach. They tend to have more athletes. They would say that they probably don't have as important spring seasons or non-traditional seasons. But there's some outstanding schools in Division 3. In my sort of experience, I'm seeing that most Floridians do not want to go up north to play Division 3. And so the problem there is that your options are very limited in the state of Florida. For those of us that live in Florida, if you want to play men's soccer Division 1, you're looking at FIU, you're looking at Florida Atlantic, Florida Gulf Coast, UCF, University of North Florida, Stetson. I think that's about it. And most of them schools, you can get bright futures, but they're very, very good playing schools. And in Division 2 for the state schools is University of West Florida. Then you go straight into the private schools, which can be a little bit more expensive. But like I say, I think if you do have the academic resources, especially if you have the financial resources, Division 3 offers some really good programs and good coaching and good resources. Division 2 is kind of in the middle. Offer less scholarships in Division 1, but they do offer scholarships as opposed to Division 3. In Florida, we have the Sunshine State Conference, so there's 11 Division 2 schools in Florida, which is the Sunshine State. Obviously, Rollins is a part of them. And kind of Division 2 is supposed to be a hybrid between Division 1 and Division 3. So these are the amount of programs that are available. As you can see, there are far more women's programs than there are men's. And this is probably not the platform that we will get into that discussion of why, but that's the reality. Which the reality means that there are more spots on women. There are more spots for women's players. There are more scholarships for women's players, and there's not the global impact. The best players in the world pretty much play in the US, and that's not the case for the men. So guys get a double whammy here. There are less programs, less scholarships, and a bigger pool of athletes from whom to choose from. These are the scholarships that can be offered. So these are the maximum that you can be offered. In Division One, virtually every program offers the maximum 14 for women and 9.9 for men. In Division Two, it's very much more a percentage. Like for instance, at Rollins, we do not offer 9 full scholarships. We have a percentage of that, and that's typical of most Division Two schools. Why women have 9.9 and we have 9, I have no idea. And where they came up with 9.9 from, I have no idea. But that's what it is. So what you'll find is that the majority of soccer programs, if they do want you to play on this team and they do have some form of scholarships, then they will try and give you a partial scholarship. That's the majority of schools.
Because I have Florida prepay as well for the rest of it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you raise your volume, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Lisa, Seth's mom. I was just speaking to him about Florida prepay scholarships.
Right.
Well,
So Florida prepay is great. And
additional to the I was saying additional to a scholarship.
Right.
Like for something that's partials, Florida prepay can cover the rest of it.
Okay, so there's two things here. For state schools, UCF, Florida Gulf Coast, FIU, absolutely. Bright Futures and Florida Prepay will cover basically the tuition of the school. The problem you have is that these are really high level programs. So it's good to say, oh yeah, I can go to UCF. But the chance of you playing there is not very high. However, if you go to a private school, if you came to Rollins, what you get obviously you get Florida Prepay and you get Bright Futures, but you just get the dollar amount. So tuition at Rollins is about 51,000. Let's say Bright Futures is 7,000 to 8,000. You're not going to get 100% of tuition for Bright Futures. You're just going to get the dollar amount.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. Thank you. Yeah.
You know, so that's the issue. The issue in Florida is that the big schools with their programs, it's like, oh great, but the chances of you getting on that program on that team is quite low.
Right.
And if you can, fantastic. So this is the guy that coaches at the University of Connecticut women's basketball. He's probably seen as, if not with Pat Summitt, the most successful college basketball coach for females, and he did this in the NCAA a couple of years ago, and I think it resonates with virtually every sport and every coach.
Recruiting enthusiastic kids is harder than it's ever been. Because every kid watches TV and they watch the NBA or they watch Major League Baseball or they watch the NFL, whatever sport they watch, WNBA, it doesn't matter. And what they see is people just being really cool. So they think that's how they're going to act. They haven't even figured out which foot to use as a pivot foot, and they're going to act like they're really good players. You see it all the time. You see it at every AAU tournament. You see it every high school game. So recruiting kids that are like really upbeat and loving life and love the game and have this tremendous appreciation for when their teammates do something well, that's hard. That's hard. It's really hard. So on our team, me, my coaching staff, we put a huge premium on body language. And if your body language is bad, you will never get in the game. Ever. I don't care how good you are. If somebody says, well, you just benched Stewie for, 35 minutes in the Memphis game a couple years ago. Yeah, I did. Oh, but that was to motivate her for the South Carolina game the following Monday. No, it wasn't. Stewie was acting like a 12-year-old. So I put her on the bench and said, sit there. It doesn't matter on our team. And the other coaches might say, well, you can do that because you got 3 other, All-Americans. I get that. I understand that. But I'd rather lose than watch kids play the way some kids play. I'd rather lose. And they're allowed to get away with just whatever. They're always thinking about themselves. Me, 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 me. I didn't score, so why should I be happy? I'm not getting enough minutes. Why should I be happy? That's the world that we live in today, unfortunately. And kids check the scoreboard sometimes because they're going to get yelled at by their parents if they don't score enough points. Don't get me started. So when I look at my team, they know this. When I watch game film, I'm checking what's going on the bench. And if somebody's asleep over there, somebody doesn't care, somebody's not engaged in the game, they will never get in the game. Ever. And they know that. They know I'm not kidding.
All right, so I just, it's something that's it's hard to explain. It is a new generation, and the players are a little bit different. I don't think they're that bad, but I do think, and sometimes it does come from the parents. The arguing with the coaches, or just being this sort of the world's against me type. I think the more collaborative you can be, the more that you work hard for your team, you do what you're supposed to do. I think it gets noticed a lot more than what people think. And especially if you're playing in an ID camp or a showcase or whatever it is that you're doing, your body language is extremely important. Now, I mean, he's one of the best ever basketball coaches, and like he said, he has very good players. If you're the best player, and you're scoring lots of goals, you're saving lots of goals, concessions is going to be made, I'm sure. But most of us are fit into that 80%. We're not in the top, but we're not in the bottom. And then that's when your body language becomes extremely important. So in terms of the recruiting process, schools will recruit me. That's just not true. If you're in that top 5%, everybody's recruiting you. If you play on the US U17 national team, everybody is recruiting you. The reality is that most people are not. Most people are in that. They play for their high school. They play for their club. Maybe they don't play for high school. Maybe they're even in the DA. And, you can go to these. I mean, obviously with COVID, things has changed in the last year, but you go to college events and you'll see coaches lined up along the sideline. They're not evaluating every 22 players. They are evaluating maybe 3 players that they think can come to their school. So there's a big misnomer there. It's the player parent ends up having to recruit the school because sometimes a school will come and recruit you, but you don't want to go and live in Iowa, or you don't want to go to a school with 40,000 students, or you don't want to go to a school with 2,000 students. So it's really important that you choose, and you go after the schools that you feel that you're going to be most comfortable with. And from there, hopefully you get that connection, but it isn't easy. And again, finances come into everything. Obviously in Florida, we have Bright Futures and the Florida Prepay, which basically isolates how many schools that you can actually go to. And the fact that Florida State and Miami don't play men's soccer, which is again another whole story thing that we could debate, but we won't, means that the options are so much more limited. So it's really important that it says here most players' parents end up recruiting school. That the parents have to help, but the player needs to be sending the emails. The player needs to be the one contacting the coach. The player needs to be the one who really is interested in that school. Not because the dad or the granddad graduated from that school. Not because the mom had a fantastic time when she went there. That's irrelevant. It's 2021. It's what school is best for the student, for the player, and where are they going to have the best opportunities and the best 4 years. So when do you start the process? So those of you that have friends that that play in the or are females, all right, either sisters or friends of family or whatever. Because there's such a shortage of players, females end up committing much earlier because coaches are scared that they won't get a big enough roster and that there won't be enough talent available when they get to the senior year. That is not the case in the men's game. So in the women's game, freshmen, they are signing or they're committing freshmen and sophomores. The high-level Division Ones are committing everybody by the end of their junior year. The Division Twos and Threes have so many more players then to choose from, basically into their senior year. Plus, most international players really don't get interested till after Christmas of their senior year. So some coaches will hold back roster spots. So again, what's the process in terms of being signed? It can never be too early that you look at schools, but just know that especially in Division 2 and Division 3 level, coaches will be hesitant to offer roster spots. And in Division 1, the high end, they'll tell you probably by the end of your junior year whether you're getting a roster spot or you're not getting a roster spot. And then it's up to you to decide from that. So there's a big argument now going on about whether you should play high school or not. 95% of college players play club and high school. My feeling on this is that if you are a player who feels that you have a chance to be a pro between the ages of 18 and 19, then you probably don't need to play high school. So that's about 0.5% of all soccer players aged between 16 and 18. Just all you have to do is Google how many American soccer players are earning a professional wage at the age of 18 and 19, and it's less than 100. And just think how many club players there are. The percentage is about 1%. So the majority of us are just not in that category. If you're not in that category, then you should play high school. I think as long as high school has a good team in the sense of people that you go to school with, you know, the high school experience can be a really good social experience. It could be it's a very good maturation experience. Play under the lights, you get the national anthem. It's something that is definitely undervalued. And I know from my own experience, my daughter played a high level club and she played high school. And the high school experience was a more positive one. So I think if you're not going to play high school, you really have to have a good reason. Don't not play high school because you think, oh, coaches won't be looking. It's got nothing to do with that. In the end, coaches are just going to pick good players. But I really do think there is a strong value in playing high school. So what is it like to be a student athlete? It's long days. You do, and again, if you are a player at a top 20 Division 1 basketball player or football program, it's different. If you're a soccer player at Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, it's going to be long days. Practices are not always at the same time. They have to be changed because of class schedules. Away trips, they can be 5-6 hours in a bus. It's a physically demanding game. Obviously, nowadays with all the technology that's available, it's almost too much technology available. Players get brought in for 15-20 minutes at a time to talk to the coach and discuss what they're doing and how they're doing well, or maybe what things that they could improve on. Then you have team meetings. Then you have a study hall. Then you have to go to classes, and then obviously you have to have exams. It's really interesting is that on the outside looking in, a student athlete seems to have everything going for them. When you're the inside looking in, they are very stressed. They feel they have not enough time. And we do have to work really hard with them to make sure that they're not overwhelmed. Now, with guys, they won't tell you. You know, those parents that are listening in on this, you know, boys are not really good at telling you what their feelings are and what they're stressed about. Girls will tell you about all day, every day. And so that sounds funny, but it's not funny when there's a real issue. So we have to really monitor what we do with the players. We have an app that they check in and they tell us about their sleep patterns and what they're eating and what level of stress they feel. So on any given day, someone might have a stress level of 5, which is the highest, which is fine. But if they do 14 consecutive days when their stress level's at a 5, then that's a problem. So at least we recognize that now. But the life of a student athlete is one that is busy, is one that can be overwhelming. Ultimately, I think is extremely beneficial, but you have to be prepared to work. So when you're looking at a program, what should you be looking at? So you've got to understand what your academic level is and what you're interested in actually studying. Rollins is completely different to UCF, right? Rollins is a school with 2,000 students. UCF is a school with about 60,000 students. UCF is a research-based school. Rollins is a teaching-based school. Both very good schools. There is no difference in terms of the degree in a sense, but as a student, you want to go to the school that fits you. You want to go to the school where if you want to be in a teaching environment, you go to a smaller classes. If you're research, then you go to the bigger classes. Location is important, as I said, especially for Floridians. We like to be in the warm areas. Do you want to be rural? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to have a place that's got good transportation? The size of the school is important. Some people get swallowed up by a $30,000 of 30,000 students. Other people think that 5,000 students is far too small. Again, that will probably depend on the high school that you go to. You know, the climate, you know, do you want to change your seasons? Do you want to be in North Carolina? You don't mind being cold and going to Boston? You want to be warm all the time, but you don't, but the humidity of Florida. Obviously, cost is extremely important. Somebody talked about the Florida prepay and the bright futures, which makes Florida public schools quite affordable. But then the chances are that your playing time become limited. How important is soccer in the process of choosing a school? And then what's your chance of playing time? And then this is where you have to have really honest conversations with the coaches and parents, and players really don't like doing this. If a coach offers you a scholarship, chances are they want you to be on their team and they feel like they're investing in your future. If they say you're playing for a roster spot, you've got to be very careful there. And then that's where you've got to look at the rosters over the last 3 or 4 years. Are they just trying to help admissions gain enrollment, or do they really give players the opportunity to play their way into the squad? And that becomes very difficult, right? You don't want to be that, the coach going to the admissions guy and saying, "Oh, I've just got another 5 players to sign up and enroll," when he doesn't even think they have any chance of being on the team. And then when you evaluate the soccer program, what are you looking at? So you look at the coaching staff. Have they been there a long time? Well, that might not necessarily. I have been here at Rollins a long time, but if I'm not very good, that doesn't really help you. What you want to see is, one is the coaching staff. 2, how long they've been there. What have they done? The assistant coaches, where are they from? What have they done with previous assistant coaches? Have previous assistant coaches gone and coached at high-level programs, or have they just, gone and sold real estate? Is the coaching staff committed to making players better, or are they just trying to get wins under their belt and, they'll try and out-recruit the players that they have? The roster strength. So what you'll see is, especially now, we'll talk about COVID, everybody's got really big rosters because everybody's been given another year of eligibility. But is it lots of freshmen or is it lots of seniors? And and you can find this out now, playing time. You might have a roster of 30, but only 15 players play. Our philosophy here at Rollins is we don't make many subs. So we have a big roster right now, and we've tried to tell the players that come the fall, we're not expecting to make very many subs. So, you know, we might have 30 people on the roster, but the bottom line is if we play a game on Saturday, we're only expecting 15 or 16 players to actually get onto the field. What's the schedule like? What's the travel like? Do they play teams that are of similar ilk, or do they play teams to get wins, or do they play teams that they get beaten all the time because they're not at the level of the teams they play? What's the history of the program? And what is the likelihood of playing time? And will the school make a commitment to have you on the team? Or do they just say, you know, turn up for orientation and we see if we can get you a tryout? So these are some of the recruiting rules. Basically, up to your junior year, coaches cannot call or email you. Obviously, we can email to promote ID camps, but you can't get a call from a coach. And really, what happens there is your club coaches or high school coaches become very important. Obviously, you can attend their prospect camps, just like you're doing right now. That's perfectly legal. And then as you become a junior, the coaches can call and email. And in Division 2, you can actually try out with a Division 2 team. Okay. And all the recruiting rules, the coaches have to pass an NCAA recruiting test. So all coaches are very well up on the rules. And it's not for the players to really worry about. It's for the coaches. But you just need to understand as a freshman and a sophomore, or at any time, if you're a college showcase, the coaches cannot talk to you during that tournament. So how do you contact a coach? So first thing is to be organized. Have a plan. All right. If you send an email and you carbon copy more than one coach, it will be deleted immediately. Actually, it's the international kids that do this. It's not so much the American kids. We'll get an email that's addressed to 350 coaches. And you can, and again, you can spot the BCC just a million miles away. It has to be personalized. Has to be personalized. And obviously, I mean, you know, I've got here smart email address. I mean, everybody now knows this, right? I mean, we haven't, you know, back in the day, there was some ridiculous email addresses, but obviously have a legit Yahoo, Gmail type address. Do have to be persistent, just like everything else in life. If you just ask once, it's probably not, you know, people get caught up. They get a lot of emails, and that's where you have to self-recruit. You have to personalize that email. Start now on the timeline. No, absolutely. And then you start introducing yourself. Then you follow up by telling the coach what tournaments you're going to be playing in, when your schedule is going to be. And ultimately, as you get into your junior year, you need to talk to the coach and just say, are you interested? And could I have a roster spot? If he says no, at least you know where you stand. The open-ended answer is one that's very frustrating. So the more precise the information you can get from the coaches, the better it will be for you in the long run in terms of good information. Move on from that. Done that. Do want to talk a little bit about social media. And again, we know this a little bit now, but what goes out in the world stays there. Be careful of what you post. My daughter is a big tweet person, and I really get on her with what she retweets, because what you retweet is what you stand for. Even though you may be retweeting something that you think is bad, you may be retweeting something you think is sarcastic, but in a cold light of day, it becomes you and it becomes your property. And, you know, it's not a bad idea to Google your name, see what's out there, and try and delete it now before people see it. And again, I think, you know, we're probably far too critical of young people and what they do with their social media. And again, it's the world we live in right now. So you've got to be just very careful with what you put on the social media. So how to be successful? You research, you target, you communicate, you get proper evaluations, and you evaluate, review, and again, you come up to that. You have to have that ultimate conversations with coaches. And to be quite frank, a lot of that time it comes down to cost. So for instance, you could talk to me and I could say, yeah, we'd love to have you, and you can come and walk on. And then you'll say, but I got an academic scholarship of 30,000, which sounds fantastic, except now you have 40,000 to pay. So ultimately, I think that the decision will come down to the financial affordability of the family, the relationship with the coach, and does the player feel comfortable going into that program? Obviously, we do the resume. This is very straightforward. Remember, you're going to get all this information, so we don't really need to go through it too much. But basic stuff. Actually, this is wrong. You should not put your social security number in there. There's no reason why you should put your social security number. I don't know why I put that in there. But the classic, your coach's information, your academic information, primarily the majority of schools, when you do look at a school, the first thing they'll say is what your grades, what's your SAT, just because that puts you into a certain category. Your grades are very, very important. So obviously this is really important. It's how to cut a video, how to make your video somewhat interesting. I'll go on to this for like 10 seconds. I won't bore everybody. And this is the actual address. So this literally shows you
build a highlight video. The
how
first
to
thing you
make
need to
a
do,
highlight
obviously,
video.
is go through all of your game footage and identify those sections that you want to use in your highlight reel. You'll see here I've got a game.
So this is perfect. This is a high school kid or a college kid has figured out how to help people make a video. So it's very informational. We don't need to watch it right now. You're going to have the address, but if you are going to do a video, I definitely recommend watching this before you do it, and then try and edit. See, there are companies that do that, but if this is a good way of not having to pay for them services. But the video is important, especially if you're going out of state, especially during COVID when coaches couldn't even go and watch games. It gives them their first insight, and it gives them an idea of the standard that you're playing. So I've just talked about it a little bit more in terms of recruiting men compared to women, and the issue there is what happens is that people start talking at cocktail parties or whatever, and at work, and so they say, well, my daughter's got this, and you think, well, that's not happening to my son. But men, less scholarships, more players, less state schools, smaller rosters, more internationals, coaches wait for their decisions. Women, more scholarships, more state schools, bigger rosters, less players to choose from, the rush to commit, and more commitments. So, this is one of those times. I have two daughters, but this is like one of them times when it's not better to be a man in this situation, I'm afraid. Obviously, we talked about costs. Virtually every coach, once there is a willingness for them to come onto the roster, they will try and combine everything in terms of grants, loans, federal aid, institutional aid, state scholarships, and obviously athletic scholarships. So, like I said, 96% of players have some kind of packaging in terms of the coaches want to reduce the amount of athletic scholarships. The parents, what they should care about is the bottom line, which is why maybe, back in the day when we had cocktail parties before COVID, you would hear someone say, I got a full ride to go to this school. And you're like, well, that guy's not very good. Well, he did get a full ride, but 80% was a state scholarship, 10% was institutional aid, 5% was loans and federal aid, and 5% was an athletic scholarship. So important things to know, FAFSA, this should be done January 1st of senior year. I recommend everybody fills this out. Don't think, well, you know, how much you made. It never seems to follow for us who gets FAFSA. It's basically they look at the last 3 years of taxes, and then will you be eligible for federal aid? You also get the offer to do college loans, which we know that has been quite controversial. But I do recommend that you do FAFSA to get an understanding of how much money. Basically, FAFSA will say, this is how much the parents are expected to contribute. That could be 100%, could be 50%. And based on that is how much financial aid is offered. So with COVID, the rules have been different. Obviously, the last year has not been the greatest year in terms of our just playing games. We ended up playing 6 games in the spring, which was more than many teams. So that means all our players are back, which means that we have more seniors, larger roster. We've hardly recruited any freshmen this year. This year was the worst year to be a college senior. Everybody's budget has been cut, and people are going to have to, take squad. We have to rotate our squad because we can't take so many people on the travel buses and everything else. So even though it looks like we're coming to the end of COVID, I think for 2021, 22, there will still be the impact of COVID. Hopefully by 2022, things will have evened out and we'll get back to some kind of normality. But things are different right now. There's no question about that. Overnight campus visit is obviously a good opportunity for you to see the school and the program. However, again, well, with COVID, I think you're going to see most universities not allowing high school students to actually stay on the school. I think that's where you're going to find there's going to be an explosion of identification camps that actually have housing so that players and recruits can actually see what it's like to be at the program. But when you do visit, and obviously you should, some of the questions that you should ask: how many seniors do you have? And that's obviously going to be important for recruiting. What does the coach have in terms of the preferred invited and uninvited walk-ons? Rollins, basically what we'll do is we'll offer you a roster spot. And if we don't offer you a roster spot, we will say we'll have a tryout in September. Most 99% of players don't make that tryout. It's too busy. But we'll invite some players to train with us in the spring. Ratio of walk-ons to scholarship players. You could just, a coach should be able to describe the typical day of a player. And then what is the overall GPA of the team to see what is the commitment to academics within that program. Obviously, with the admissions department, what is your academic support system? So at a school like Rollins, we don't do anything for the athletes. We have a very good tutorial service that is good enough for all students. If you go to a bigger school like UCF, they will have a whole academic support system purely just for athletics. Another really good question to ask is, what is the retention rate? So this is how private schools especially are evaluated. How many students transfer after their first year? And schools go out of their way to make the highest retention rate they possibly can, because that's how they're judged by US News and World Report and other ways. When they're evaluating a school, it's what is the retention rate. So it's okay for them to recruit students, but can they retain them? And if you get a chance to talk to a player, what do you want to ask? What do you enjoy the experience? Do you feel you're improving? How is the school? I mean, schools now have very fancy websites and YouTube videos and everything else, but what's it really like to be there? And what is the program what you expect it to be? Did the coach talk a lot of nonsense, or did he actually come through and say this is what happened? And a really good question is, if you had to do it over again, would you make the same decision? So how to choose the right camp? hopefully you'll this camp has been one that's given you a good sort of feeling about Rollins. But you should, does the camp have a curriculum? How does the qualifications of the coaching director, quality, the competitiveness, and some form of evaluation? For this camp, what we're going to do is just literally each coach is going to talk to the player, and through our email, we're just going to give a small evaluation of what we think the strengths and weaknesses are. Also, I don't know if you know this, for the parents, we evaluated all the players from a fitness perspective, and we've also videoed at least 2 of the sessions. We hope to video the 3rd session tomorrow. So the players will actually have video that they can see, that they can actually use in terms of making a highlight video if they choose to. And again, it will just give them a good overall understanding of where they are in terms of the overall level of play. In order to play in the NCAA, you have to enroll in the NCAA Eligibility Center. So this is the address that will be on the PDF that you'll get. Again, it's the NCAA trying to make some money. So every player that plays NCAA sport has to be registered through the NCAA Eligibility Center. I think it costs about $60 to $70, where basically you're doing what the high schools are doing. They evaluate your transcripts. They evaluate the fact that you've not been paid to play. And then they pass you from an eligibility standpoint and academic standpoint. But you do have to be certified by the NCAA in order to play an NCAA sport. So whether you're a basketball player, football player, soccer player, volleyball player, it doesn't matter. Everybody that plays the NCAA is certified by the NCAA. And then this just gives you your eligibility. Pretty much, if you go to the standard school in Florida, everybody knows the courses and are very standard. The only issue is if you go to a magnet school, or maybe it's a religious school that maybe has just been set up and they're not really sure of the eligibility rules. But if you go to a standard high school, a public school, or a private school that's been around for 20, 25 years, then the eligibility shouldn't be a problem. And then obviously with the SAT, this has become somewhat mute for this year because the NCAA and a lot of schools have waived the ACT and SAT tests. So it'll be interesting going forward if they decide to make it mandatory. If you test well, then take the test. Because again, it's another way for you to prove that you're academically at a certain level. If you don't test well, then absolutely don't. But you got to make sure, obviously, that your grades are good, and you could come up with a portfolio to make sure these schools can see your academic ability. And then there are different standards between Division I and Division II. But like I say, I don't think that's a big issue as long as you go into a standard school. So these are just some terms. A qualifier is a player that meets all the academic criteria. And if you're a qualifier, you can compete, you can practice and receive an athletic scholarship. A partial qualifier is someone that maybe graduates from high school but doesn't get a high enough SAT score. So they can receive a scholarship, but you can't, and you can practice, but you cannot compete. A non-qualifier is someone that didn't meet the academic standards or didn't take enough English or maths or science and didn't get a high enough SAT score. And so you're not able to practice or receive an athletic scholarship or compete. And generally, them non-qualifiers will go to a junior college, because if you graduate from a junior college, then you're eligible to play in an NCAA school. And these are the SAT sliding scales in terms of GPA. So if you have a 2.3, you need a 980. If you have a 2.299 and a 990, then you are a partial qualifier. So these are some recruiting terms that you can look at. If you're really bored on a Sunday evening, you can go through them. And quite frankly, it's more important for the coaches than it is for the players. All right, so I'm sure that you've really tired of my voice. I didn't hear any questions, so I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing. On this PDF, we won't go through it, but there's some what we think is the psychological and the physical qualities of what makes a good player. But we're not going to go through that for right now. I think you've heard my voice enough. Okay. Please, any questions? Is there anybody?
We're all good here.
Yes. Okay. All right. So just so that you know, you'll get a PDF of this. When we send everybody the final, like, thank you very much. When we send the video links and the fitness test, part of the email will include the PDF. If you want to see me tomorrow, for the parents that are in town, just say hello and ask me a question. You obviously have my email. Please email me. Not a problem at all. Hopefully I didn't waste too much of the last hour. So hopefully you found this interesting and informative. All right, so I'm going to end now, and have a great Thursday night. And
Thank you for the meeting, Coach.
No problem at all. All right, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.